This little mini documentary is about the Commodore computers, the Commodore Amigas I shall be doing later on another day, so to speak, because this is starting from basics now. So it's the first computer which started off like the first domestic computer which started off with was the VIC-20. The VIC-20 to the UK and America, in Germany the VC-20, in Japan the VIC 1001 was an 8-bit home computer which was sold by the Commodore British Business Machines. The VIC-20 was announced in 1980, roughly 3 years after Commodore's first personal computer, the PET. The VIC-20 was the first computer of any description to sell 1 million units. Now people think, oh well, 1 million units is not a lot. It is a lot considering it was brilliant in its day, especially. This type of specs of the system, which I shall read out now, were the release date was for the VIC 1001, which was for Japan. It was released in Japan, was in 1980. Quite surprising. That's my birth year. But for the rest of the the UK, America, was 1981. But it was discontinued in 1985. The operating system that the Commodore VIC-20 used was the Commodore Basic 2.0. The CPU that he used was the MOS Technology 6502. And there was like a PAL version and an NTSC version, which was, for the PAL version, was the 1.108404 megahertz. That's PAL version, and the NTSC version for America and wherever was 1.02 megahertz. The memory that it had was 5 kilobytes to 64 kilobytes. Graphics was a VIC 176 by 184. The sound was a 3 square 1 noise mono. Its predecessor was a Commodore CBM 2, which this next clip is an advert for the actual system, the VIC-20. It had William Shatner of Star Trek fame, and I think that's probably what sold the system as well, having somebody famous saying, oh, you must get this, you must get this, which be for yourselves.
Why buy just a video game from Atari or Intellivision? Invest in the wonder computer of the 1980s for under $300. The Commodore VIC-20. Unlike games, it has a real computer keyboard. With the Commodore VIC-20, the whole family can learn computing at home. Plays great games, too. Under $300, the wonder computer of the 1980s, the Commodore VIC-20.
Coming soon, Commodore brings you Gorf, the Wonder arcade game, and Omega Race in home versions.
Then there was released after that was the Commodore 64, the famous Commodore 64. There are many different variants of the Commodore 64. Obviously, you could tell by the keys, different colours, and unfortunately, I've not got one of them. Not the original bullnose or bread bin style computer, so to speak, Commodore 64s. But I aim to get one day. Anyway. There was also the Commodore 64C. That was like a more modernised, probably it was some that sacrificed some things which I noticed, and then after that there was the Commodore 128, which was the 128K version, which, don't forget, also all these particular systems like the VIC-20, the Commodore 64, the 64C, the 128, that you could have like a floppy drive, which was a 5¼ inch disc, similar to the BBC like computers. And not only that as well, the cleverest thing about it was how you linked each device up. You'd link it into the back, then you could plug something else into the back of the disk drive. To me, honestly, that was like daisy chaining. You could daisy chain, but I don't know what the limits were to that, so don't quote me on that. Also, as well, Commodore released the Commodore 64 GS, which it didn't sell well. It was like they released it and it was forgotten about. Basically, I had the impression of the Commodore 64 GS was just like it was a console. There's no impressions about it. It was a console. It used the cartridges which were made, you could plug into the back of the Commodore 64 VIC-20s, and that basically just, it didn't have a keyboard. Commodore 64 GS, you just plugged it in and you're away. Unfortunately, it didn't sell. It wasn't that popular, so it went down like a lead balloon, or a lead weight, so to speak, even. But there was a few other systems. Excuse me about this. There was a Commodore 16, which that was totally incompatible with the Commodore 64. There was a Commodore Plus 4, which had like the rubber arrow keys. I weren't keen on that one for some unknown reason. I just didn't like it, a Commodore Plus 4. But for retroness, I'd like to get one. But you know, the only downside with the, I think it was the VIC-20, had different power connections. You couldn't use the old Commodore 64 on the back. It was a separate connector. That was the only downside. So, but apart from that, they were good machines. They're really good machines. I even know that in the 80s, there were Commodores in England. There were quite a few. They sold quite a few units over here. But there was also a Commodore 65, but it was going to be a Commodore 64 successor. It was never released. So, you know what I mean? That was a pity, because it would have been nice to see it. But that's pretty much about it, guys. So that's pretty much the history. So probably the next video I will be doing is the history of the Amiga to tie on with this. So that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. Please comment in the section below. I'm also on Twitter. The Twitter username is @RetroChris.